Welcome back to the Paradigm Shift. I am, of course, Big Rob, back with Jesse. How you doing, buddy?
DJ Jazzy Jesse in the house, ready to go.
All right, let's get it going. Today, we are going to talk about the Clarity Act and government corruption in Congress. But mostly, we're going to unpack the Clarity Act. There was a lot of over 100 attempted amendments in this bill, and not many of them got through. But we're going to talk about some of them because people need to understand the malicious nature of some of these politicians when it comes to you as the average retail investor or just American citizen in general, right?
Mm.
People blind don't really follow along with some of the amendments with ill will some of these congressmen and women try to pass that are detrimental to you, and then you vote for them again. Right?
Hey, that's the American way.
I'm looking at you, Elizabeth Warren. So, yes, the Clarity Act. So I've got a handful of amendments. I've got a list of ones that are good for retail investors, and then I have a list of some that are detrimental to American retail investors. So we'll go one for one.
Well,
How's that sound?
why don't we start with just a little background on what is the Clarity Act? Why are they making it? Why
Yeah,
now?
good idea.
Yeah.
Fire away. You got it. You got anything? You want me to start? Or?
Oh, okay. Well, let me go then. No, I would say so. For anybody who's unfamiliar with this, Clarity Act relates to digital assets, specifically the cryptocurrency marketplace space, etc. And in order for this to become a valid, regulated, um, let's say a marketplace that's taken seriously, that significant investment is in, and it's starting to be there, thanks to the various ETFs, is that you have to have regulation. You have to remove risk from those various investment players, whether they be on Wall Street or somewhere else, right? We got to remove the risk. And so some of the issue with, I think, the Clarity Act is like stablecoins, for example, like Tether USDT has gotten so large, it's completely unregulated. It's like a runaway freight train of a crypto project, and there's things like that there really needs to be laws around, and more importantly, I think they would refer to it as guardrails. So that's kind of how I see this thing. It's years and years in the making, and it's very, very difficult to get it pushed through.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, to kind of give my quick little synopsis on it, basically, if we want to see smart money, big money, capital flow into the digital asset space, similar to the stock market or the S&P 500, uh, which is the same thing. I don't know why I just said that, but you need these guardrails in place, like you were saying, Jesse. Otherwise, they're just not going to play ball, right? It's too much risk, and then you just have, like, to quote, unfortunately, Gary Gensler, the Wild West, right? Where they will dabble, they will manipulate the market. But if you ever want to see the market cap of this entire asset class move up and continue to see adoption and stuff, you need that capital to flow in. You need institutions, banks, and so on and so forth to be coming into this space, whether you like them or you don't like them. They are a necessary evil.
Yeah, and I think we're really separating the good projects from the shit coins and rug pulls, right? And there's more than enough of those. There's so many examples of that happening. There's misappropriation of customer funds. You saw what happened with Luna that spiraled into Voyager and Celsius and all these various entities that went down in flames, and misleading statements, all these different things. So really there needs to be a framework, and so I think it's overdue. uh really, when this market cap passed $1 trillion, they absolutely should have done it then. But the reality is you're dealing with politics, and politics are what they are. And sometimes the can gets kicked down the road, and here we are, right?
Well, let's be real. Even at $1 trillion, they still just were not taking the asset class seriously. You still had your Black Rocks and your J.P. Morgans calling it a pet rock, and all that kind of stuff. But now all of a sudden they're elbow deep in the space.
They're elbow deep in Ethereum rocks, right?
Yep, exactly. It's just interesting how that kind of played out. But meanwhile, they were probably buying the whole time. But anyway, I'm hoping most of you know what amendments are, right? Jesse, can you break down what an amendment is, just so that everybody's on the same page before we continue? There's people who are probably not from the States, if they're listening overseas, whatever the case might be as well, right?
Yeah. So typically you would have a legislator, whoever that may be, a sponsor of the bill is how they would refer to them. And then you're going to have like a co-sponsor or something like that. So somebody from one party, somebody from the other party. They're going to have their team put together a framework of what they want to see in this prospective bill. They're going to put it out there to the different houses, right? So you can go to the House, you can go to the Senate, and when it goes in there, everybody else gets to see it, and then they get to try and add on what they want to see in this bill or what they would like to see removed from the bill. And ultimately, it's one of these things where, love it or hate it, this is how democracy works, that what you propose may not ultimately be anywhere near what you get at the finish line. And I think Brian Armstrong and Coinbase are learning that very intimately throughout this whole process, especially as I think Coinbase is a great example that they realized they needed a lobbying sort of wing for crypto. They've dove into the pool head first, but they're realizing that there's some nuance to this thing, and I don't know if they're quite there yet. So anyway, yes, that's kind of how a bill works. That's and how the amendments get added, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, to quickly just kind of expand on Coinbase briefly before we get started here, talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? We have a company that has represented themselves as being trying to fight for the average retail investor in terms of yield, which is a big talking point in this bill, is the ability to stake your stable coin, which is a coin pegged to the US dollar in terms of value, and gain yield on it, right? Now you have exchanges offering an average, I'd say, of 3 to 5%, right? Something along those lines, depending on the exchange. Banks obviously don't want that to happen, right? Because they give you 0.01% or something like that, and they like it that way, and they know that, or they fear that people will run to exchanges and stake their idle money there in form of stablecoin for 5% as opposed to 0.01% in your local savings account. But I digress. Going back to Coinbase. Now, Coinbase fought this, and everyone thought that it was because they were fighting on behalf of the retail investor, because they were saying that they were fighting on behalf of the retail investor, right? Brian Armstrong was on TV saying this is not fair to the American people, and when really what it was that a lot of people don't realize 19% of Coinbase's annual revenue, which equals, I think, almost $2 billion, give or take, is from their own stablecoin yield that they gain. So them, with this bill passing with no yield on stablecoins, Coinbase is giving up almost $2 billion annually in revenue, 19% of their annual revenue. And I was saying that before they altered the bill. I said, Coinbase isn't doing this for you. They're doing this for their 19% annual revenue. And sure enough, people argued with me about it on YouTube and stuff. And no, Brian Armstrong, he's a superhero for the people, right? And then all of a sudden they amended it a little bit so that Coinbase could still gain their yield, but average retail investors could not. And now Brian Armstrong is perfectly fine with the bill as structured, now that Coinbase can keep their 19% annual yield. Suddenly he's not fighting this bill anymore.
Yeah, that's interesting. And for context on this also, I think you're really kind of hitting the nail on the head, because what people got to realize is that Coinbase is domiciled within the US. They are not offshore. The offshore exchanges all have their own token. Coinbase does not, because they're in the US. Now, they do have a publicly traded stock, but they're missing all the benefits of like a BNB, that what BNB gives Binance, right? And so if you think about it, they're functionally not competitive because of US law. So that's why they're fighting this as hard as they can to be more competitive and on a more even footing with the Binances that are out there, right? And at the end of the day, is it all about the people? That's probably debatable, right? But I think what it does do is it makes them more competitive while still being US based.
Yeah. I think as the people, as the average retail investor, I think you're lucky to be considered an afterthought.
True.
At best.
Yes, true.
You're what they talk about around the poker table later. And hey, what about the people? Yeah, screw those guys. That's basically it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into these amendments a little bit. So first, let's go with a positive one first. So amendments or provisions that were good for retail investors. Keep in mind, not all of these passed, right? But the point is to show the intent of some of these politicians, right? Insider resale limitations on assets. So you've got basically a strengthened by adoption Lummis amendment. So Cynthia Lummis has always been a champion for crypto, as we know, right?
Yep.
On insider trading rules. So caps and insider affiliate resales to the public over 12 months to curb dumping, manipulation, or insider trading. Protects retail from coordinated sell-offs that crash prices, is explicitly designed to reduce market manipulation risks.
Okay.
So we do need that. That is very, very good, because how often do we see these token unlocks? Now, here's a caveat to that, though. It's not always ill will. You take a project like Ondo, for example, who has like a 30% token unlock annually in January for the last 2 years since they've been around, right? And that sounds awful, right? However, holders are incentivized to not sell their tokens. They make more money holding their tokens than they do selling them, right? So it's more financially beneficial for them to not dump on the market. So for the last 2 Januaries since they've been around, I have been able to long on the day of the dump, or the day of the unlock, because what happens is people fear it, right? So they start to sell off leading into it, and then it doesn't dump. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The price goes down out of fear that the price will go down. But then on the day that it's supposed to unlock, nobody sells their tokens that have unlocked, and then I put in a long, and I think I gained like a 26% move to the upside on it in like 2 days, because you have to know the nuance of these things, right?
Yeah.
So while I do agree with this amendment that we do have to protect retail investors, because let's be honest, how many retail investors on average look into this kind of stuff, look into what the token unlock schedule is, or anything like that when they buy something?
Very few. Very few.
It's
easy
just
to jump on.
what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Very easy to get dumped on in that whole scenario. And truthfully, I mean, I've seen this play out multiple times where the longs, those who got in early get dumped on by a project, by potentially an early investor. I remember one project where the founder had an investor that was involved early on, that the moment it went live dumped everything, totally caught him off guard, and he was like, "What?" and it like tanked the whole project, But again, that person who was selling, I mean, they didn't care about anybody else, and they were just following the rules that are out there, which is no rules.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And this prevents that kind of a thing, right? Because let's be honest, that should be a securities transaction anyways, right? If you're having all of these initial investors, or you're giving tokens away to these companies or individuals, and then their token unlocks come along and they dump them. I mean, you're selling them to them early. It's kind of a securities transaction.
It is a securities transaction, so that would fail the Howey test in the U.S. So that would be
Yeah.
labeled a security if you were the project and you gave it to an investor prior to the market being able to get the coin. That would qualify as a security. So yeah.
Yeah, you're guaranteeing a return, right? Right?
Yep.
So I do like that. Obviously, it's by Cynthia Lummis, so I wouldn't expect anything less from her. Amendment provisions, which are bad for retail investors. Prohibition on passive yield. So we kind of touched on that one. So your idle stable coins can no longer gain APY, APR, however you want to word it, just sitting on an exchange. Now, the banks lobbied for this because, like I said before, they want to offer 0.01% on your fiat in your savings account, as opposed to 3 to 5% on Coinbase or wherever else, right? Crypto.com, whatever. Now, this is obviously a screw job to the retail investor. And the reason for that is because banks could have argued and fought for the ability to offer the same yield as an exchange, i.e., 5%, 3%, whatever, on your fiat.
Wait a
They
minute.
could have fought.
You're telling me you think the bankers are going to offer their customers more money?
I'm saying they could have. Right?
They could have. Right,
They
right.
could have. They had two options when it comes to fighting this, right? They could argue to be able to offer more yield on your fiat, or they could try to bring how much yield the exchanges could offer down to their level. And they chose to do the latter, screwing over their own customers, right?
Hey, it's the American way.
Well, it's the American way, but at the same time, the way that the banks did this, for me, is un-American, and I'm not even American. It's un-American because what they did was they tried to stifle any sort of competition, which is anti-American.
Well, it's not just anti-American, that's monopolistic, right? No.
It is monopolistic.
It is monopolistic. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it is monopolistic, and America is historically anti-monopoly,
Yeah. So at the end of it, the banks were trying to do what was good for them. Now, they said their argument was that they're scared that there's suddenly going to be a bank run, and everyone's going to take all their money out of their savings accounts and put it all into an exchange to gain that yield, right? There's one problem with that argument. Coinbase, for example, has been offering 3 to 5% yield on stablecoins for over 7 years. And we have not seen this bank run on people's savings accounts in 7 years. Why would it all of a sudden happen? Is this bank run in the room with us now?
Maybe, right?
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the funny thing with the bank run, fundamentally, I kind of have a laugh about it, because I feel like, and I know this isn't how banking works, that a bank should have those assets one-to-one. So if you want to off-ramp your assets out of the bank, you should be able to do so at any point in time, regardless of how many other people are there at the bank to get their assets. What you're telling me is that you can't withstand that because you don't have the assets one to one. You've got a fraction of them, right? I mean, this is kind of the paradox of a bank run is that you've borrowed out all the money. You only actually have a fraction of the money, and you know a bank run can sink your whole company, right? And the funny thing is the irony in this is I think the banking lobby and that whole side in general likes to sort of discredit the crypto side of things by saying, "Oh yeah, they couldn't withstand a bank run. Oh, look what happened to FTX. Yeah, they had a bank run, and look, it all went under." Well, it went under because he was disorganized, but they actually paid back the creditors like 150%, which is insane. That's pure insanity. They were profitable and they went bankrupt, right? So figure that one out. Now, on the other side, if you went to your local bank and everybody went there at once and pulled the money, I mean, what does it take? Like 30% of the total value that's supposed to be there is going to sink this thing? The other 70% you just don't have.
Yeah, I think they have. I think it's a 10. It's a 10%, sorry, not a 10%. It's like a 90% borrow rate or something, right?
Yeah.
So they can borrow up to 90% of what you have in your account. They can 9x it basically, right? So if you have 10 grand, they can borrow like 100 grand, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Or sorry, not borrow, but they can lend out that money that they don't even have. Right.
Correct. So really the fundamental problem here is the banks in the US are too aggressive, way too aggressive. They're so aggressive that they don't even have a fraction of what you think they actually have. And I know I've told you about this before on the side, but I've run into this myself personally with Capital One a couple of times. And, one of the things with Capital One that gets me is that whenever I try to do a bank transfer in or out of Capital One, it takes it nearly a week. A week. Like it's 2026.
Yeah.
Whereas if I did a crypto transaction to a wallet, instantaneous, borderless, all the way around the globe and back again,
Yeah.
Figure that one out.
Well, I remember reading a story here in Canada. There was a guy out east that I was listening to his story on the news. He went to his bank to take out, it was like 8 grand or something like that. He wanted to buy a boat from a friend, right? So he goes to the bank. He says, I need 8 grand cash, and they say to him, well, what do you need it for?
Yeah, they want to know.
They want to know. Yeah, none of your business. And they're like, well, we need to know what you need the money for. So he ends up telling them he wants to buy a boat from a friend. You know what they told him? Go to your friend. We need you to bring us a bill of sale, like a receipt to prove that that's what you're using the 8 grand for before we'll give you the 8 grand, even though
and then
it
we'll
was
wire
his
it.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though it's his money, right?
Right.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but that's the world we're living in when it comes to fiat, right? And this banking system. They say, like, I believe it's even in the fine print of the law that once you deposit, no different than depositing crypto, by the way, once you deposit money into a bank account, it's not your money anymore, technically.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like with a crypto exchange, if the bank goes, quote, bankrupt, you stand in line as a creditor and you get a fraction back of what you actually put in there.
No. And you're last too, right?
Yes. Just like you are last. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The other companies and businesses and whales and important people, they are all at the front of the line. You're the last guy. And they're like, oh, there's a couple crumbs left if you want them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I had a former boss that he was telling me he had a house. This is probably like 10, 15 years ago. And it was in this particular area with a really good school district. So all of the houses there appreciated like within like a year or year and a half, 2 years, like a good 200 grand over where everybody bought them. Right. So he was like, I'm selling that shit, like sell it immediately, So he sells it. He gets his 200 grand difference, minus his mortgage, whatever it was. And he told us, he's like, I went to the bank and he said, I want to cash this check. And it was like $200,000. He's like, I want it in cash. And they were like they completely errored out. They were like, what? And again, they did the same. What do you need it for? None of your damn business is what I need it for. Cash it. Here it is. And they were like, well, we don't have that in the bank.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't have that in the bank? You're a bank.
Yeah. Last time I think the last time I tried to take out, I don't even call it a large amount, but I think last time I went to the bank to withdraw money from a teller, I asked for $5,000 and they couldn't give it to me.
I could see that. Yeah.
They're like, we can give you 3.
Right. Right. Yeah. So you know what that makes me think? It makes me think that the banks are operating on very tight margins. And this is why banks get bought up all the time, why it's constantly Pac-Man and they're eating each other, right? You can kind of see how that goes down because all it takes is a few not so good investments on the bank side and the whole house of cards goes down,
Yep.
But then
Yep.
the funny thing, the irony here is with all the crypto stuff is they try to point out the quote illegitimacy of cryptocurrency, yet honestly, I could probably argue just as much, if not more so, the illegitimacy of TradFi,
Well, that's just it. It's like they say, when you point one finger, 3 point back at you, right? Or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
So it's exactly it. They say these things about digital assets, but it's really exactly the same scenario for them.
Yeah.
In fact, in some cases, it's worse. Like they say, well, we can't. First of all, Elizabeth Warren will say we can't track crypto transactions. Yeah, you can. Tell me you don't understand blockchain. So either you don't understand what blockchain technology is, or you're lying. It's one of the two, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think on the one hand, if you were simply saying the immutable ledger, right? Every blockchain is a ledger. It's connected blocks. We can see every single block in the chain. That's why it's called blockchain, right? So you can see the paper trail on that chain. Now, I can see the argument with like Tornado Cash. So anybody who doesn't know Tornado Cash, this is what North Korea uses when they steal billions of dollars out of various crypto projects. And I've heard the analogy like this. It's like a getaway vehicle that robbed the bank. It drives into a warehouse and like 18 vehicles drive out. What do you do? Yeah. How do you ever recover even a fraction of that? Well, it's extremely difficult. So I can see, wanting to put guardrails against the Tornado Cash and entities like that, because that's facilitating money laundering. But if you looked at it like just on a one-to-one, no, that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's those third-party, Tornado Cash type projects that make it difficult to track. It's not blockchain technology itself.
No.
If anything, you could argue, but again, you could argue the exact same thing about fiat. How are you tracking, $1 million, drug deal or something like that? How are you tracking that fiat when they show up with a briefcase full of money? Where's the Tornado Cash, company that's mixing? You know what I mean? Like it's just as non-traceable.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of Pablo Escobar's cash fortune has never been found. Where'd that go? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Jeez.
Is it buried somewhere?
Yeah, buried. Back to the good ones here. You get to keep your own crypto wallet self-custody. So that's another positive one that they're putting in there, that you're allowed self-custody, which to me is kind of honestly kind of like fuck you too. Like, what do you mean I'm allowed to hold my own money is basically what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah, say thank you. He didn't say thank you.
Like, what? It's mine. Of course I'm going to hold it, right? The second I put it on an exchange, it's not mine anymore.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's ridiculous, but I'll take it. But at the same time, like, what?
Yeah.
We'll do another one for the good. They have to teach you basics. So every crypto app or site must give you simple explanations about risks, scams, and how crypto works. Which is, I mean, yeah, I mean, you should have that, but at the same time, that's kind of like, how do you put responsibility on an exchange for a person who chooses not to educate themselves on something before they buy it?
Think of it like this. It's like a disclaimer on a pack of cigarettes, right? Or the thing on the McDonald's coffee cup that says coffee could be hot. No shit, you know. But they actually had to do that because someone sued them at some point and said they didn't tell me the coffee'd be hot. And they're like, seriously, that wasn't implied. And they're like, nope. And then and now it's on every
Maybe.
cup. Yeah,
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean that is a good thing, but again, it goes to what you said. Like it should be kind of implied, but
yeah.
what else do we have for the bad? Yes, there was this one. Or well, actually, kind of, I want to piggyback off the last one that was bad in regards to yield, because there was another kind of side effect potentially for that had it passed, right? And that was that it would have drove a lot of centralized exchanges overseas,
Hmm.
right? Which kind of, and that was an Elizabeth Warren thing, right? So you combine that with um, there was another one that made it so that hot wallets as well would have to go overseas. They were going after decentralized applications, right?
Okay.
So it would drive them out of the US as well. Now you combine those two, and what do you have? You have Elizabeth Warren creating a scenario where the average American retail investor has extremely limited access to anything outside of your top cap projects that are on something like Coinbase, for example, right? Your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your Solana, your XRP, anything basically outside of that, retail investors would not have access to outside of a VPN. How is that good? How is that Elizabeth Warren helping Americans?
Great question. Great question. I think, anytime that you have a new and emerging field or technology or business or marketplace, I mean, this is all of those, right? You need to always facilitate innovation, promote innovation. And, one of my fundamental hangups with the entire Clarity Act in Congress, and I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again, is, the SEC is like a square peg in a square hole. The CFTC, the Commodities Exchange, that's like the circle peg in the circle hole. And this one's like an oversized star, and they're trying to mash it into both of them. And it's like, what? Like, no, like it needs its own thing to fit into. Like it is fundamentally different. It is fundamentally different in a bunch of different ways. And just try and put it in a box. It's kind of like taking like an independent voter and saying, well, you're either Republican or Democrat. And it's like, maybe you're neither, truthfully. Maybe, you're a little bit of both, but truthfully, you're neither one, and that's kind of how this is. It's neither, like it needs its own framework.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And which kind of is a good segue into another one that was bad, which was, again, Elizabeth Warren. And she tried to create a scenario where there was ambiguity between who had control over digital assets. She tried to keep that area as gray as humanly possible so that Gary Gensler 2.0 could come in and say, well, there's no real rules per se, so let's just sue everybody, right?
Yeah, which is what he did. That's exactly what he did, right?
Yeah, but she tried to do that. She tried because they're trying to in this bill they're trying to give basically the majority of digital assets oversight to them to the CFTC, right? Which, in a side note, you also now have Congress trying to get Trump to increase the size of the CFTC. Because if you don't know this, listeners, the CFTC is actually a fraction of the size of the SEC. So if they're going to oversee millions of projects, obviously they need to expand that agency, right? But that would be better for digital assets because it would label them commodities, not under the guise of the SEC, who is responsible, obviously, for securities and securities transactions. Now, there's caveats to that, stuff like initial coin offerings, like we touched on earlier. Those sort of transactions, like with XRP's initial, Ripple's initial ICO, was declared securities sales, right? So a sale wrapped a certain way can be a securities transaction, but it doesn't make the asset itself a security.
Right, right.
So in saying all that, can you tell I followed along with the Ripple case? Like, in saying all that, it would be better for investors if the CFTC oversaw the general digital asset space when it because you're not going to get someone like Gary Gensler 2.0 coming in and labeling everything of security again. What do you think?
Well, what's really ironic though with that position is that the Trump administration has fundamentally gutted numerous sections of the American government. Also, Trump 2.0 has filled even less positions than Trump 1.0, which was running it like a graveyard shift with half the freaking people weren't even there, right? So what's interesting about saying that they would have to ramp up a government entity to manage this is fundamentally against the current administration. I don't even know if they realize that because I don't think they think down the road in anything that they do, truthfully.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of counter what the current administration, kind of believes in. But I mean, it's just a side effect of expanding and adding adoption, to the digital asset space. And speaking of the administration, another amendment that was introduced that was considered a bad amendment for retail investors, but I respectfully disagree. I feel it's a good amendment for the retail investor, and that is that the current or no administration in the White House or their family members would be allowed to invest in or be involved in cryptocurrency projects while they're in office. I don't see how that's bad for the average retail investor because we all know, pun intended, for the most part, the only one who made any money in the last bull run was Trump.
Yeah, I was going to say I have a lot to say on this topic in particular.
Fire away, buddy.
Okay, so first of all, I agree with you 100% that if you were in elected office, you should not be able to front run any investment vehicle, period, any of them. And right now in the American government, front running is completely out of control. And the kicker is that if you or I were front running, we would go to prison. Okay. There are people in prison for front running and insider trading. So there was an article that I just read this morning on this. And you probably haven't heard this. So let me kind of delve into this a little bit. So all along Trump 2.0, every couple of days, whenever something crazy happens in the market, there's usually a post that says somebody has insider info. Look at this trade they took out. Look at this thing that happened where they made $200 million in 15 minutes. Look at this stuff. Who the heck is this? Who's trading, right? No one ever knows. No one knows who it is, but clearly there's someone or some people doing it, because it's being identified every time it happens. And it happens every, let's say, like 10 days ish, somewhere around there, something happens, right? Well, apparently Trump had to disclose his first quarter stock trades. And there are so many trades that it averaged out to, I think it was 62 trades per day of pure front running. Okay. And so clearly there is some sort of, obviously he's not doing this himself. Clearly there is some sort of entity that he's tied to somehow, or the sons are tied to, that is front running everything that's happened. And so, like, there are multiple examples of it with NVIDIA, with Palantir, and they did it prominently with Dell. So Michael Dell and his wife donated something like $5 or $6 billion in some philanthropic effort, right? And so from that donation, Trump then took out a position in Dell, okay? What happened after he took out the position? He announced their donation. And you know what happened with the stock? It went up like 100%. Yeah. So he's been doing that the whole time. And the amount
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence, right? And here's the crazy part. Okay. This is the part that'll just blow your mind, is that, you and I fundamentally know about Nancy Pelosi being the best trader of all time, thanks to prominently the Pelosi tracker on X, right? And really, what's it following? Well, it's following her husband, Paul Pelosi, and his trades and whatever. And so he's been front running the whole time. Okay. And the most he ever made in one quarter was $5 million, which for context was like crazy, because it's like, come on, dude, you're front running and you just made $5 million. Trump, quarter one, 750 million.
Boom, blew him out of the water.
750 million. I mean, this is where the argument's like, oh yeah, but he did it first. Yeah, he did do it. And yes, he's been front running for years, but not at that level. Not at that level. They're both dirty is the problem. They're both bad. And like another really funny example of this is
in for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Are you familiar with Marjorie Taylor Greene?
Yeah.
Okay, so she was kind of like a firecracker personality, Southern state legislator, whatever. And for a good 5 years, she was kind of a hard-nosed sort of Republican, always supported Trump, etc. Well, at the very end here, the last couple of months, she had this falling out with Trump over the Epstein files in particular, right? Because one of the big MAGA talking points forever was release the files, release the files, release the files. Well, obviously, Trump's mentioned in them 38,000 times. So now they're not releasing the files. And so Trump got in a shouting match with her. And
another
coincidence, right? So basically she steps down. Okay. Now, what's funny about all of this is really none of that. The funny thing is that when she joined Congress, she had a net worth of $700,000. When she left 5 years later, Marjorie Taylor Greene had a net worth of $27 million. And guess
what a coincidence.
Yeah, what a coincidence, right? And now guess where she is today. Do you think she's still in her home state with her constituents? The answer is no. She just bought a $5 million house in Costa Rica.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, the front-running corruption in Congress is insane right now. And everybody knows that with Trump there, that, Trump never divested his businesses, his assets. He never disclosed his tax returns. These are presidential norms that have been in place for like hundreds of years. He's never done any of them. Why? Because he's hiding everything all the time. He doesn't disclose it. So, you know what's funny about that one too is somebody did disclose his tax returns. And in doing so, he then sued the government. And apparently, we're about to settle with him for like another $1 billion plus over his tax returns, where he cheated on his damn taxes. So again, me and all the regular people that are trying to play by the rules are getting absolutely screwed while everybody in Congress is taking advantage of it. Democrat and especially the current Republican, you know?
Well, the thing is that let's be honest, this is the fault of the people who vote, right? Because we just allow this stuff. It happens because nobody does anything about it.
No,
right?
No.
Nothing is done. There's no consequences. They don't get voted out, right? Like Pelosi, how long has she been there now?
Too long. She's in her 80s.
Yeah, and this isn't new, right?
Yeah.
So people are basically, it's called passive permission, right? When someone is doing this, it's blatantly obvious. You are, and I say this, I must stress, I say this non-sarcastically. I say this literally. You are the best investor, trader the world has ever seen, right? We know what you're doing, and people still vote for you to be there.
Yeah.
That is passive permission. That is people with their vote saying, I'm okay with you using insider information to, while you're on a 6-figure salary, being worth 8 figures because of your market manipulation, or not necessarily manipulation, but your insider trading, that you would send me to prison for 25 to life for. But I'm cool with you doing it, bro.
Right. Like think about this metric, right? If the average person, let's just say completely average person, you, me, let's say we make 50% of our trades, we get them right. 50% are right, 50% are wrong, right? Let's just say that's the average person. Pelosi, Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're getting like 90% right. That is fucked up. That is fucked up. Okay. I mean, Come on now. Come on, you know?
And they're like, when they're asked, like, what? I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. What do you mean? And then they go, you know what? I'm going to retire. It's time for me to be done. I'm going to Costa Rica with my $5 million.
Tired of this shit.
What? Come on.
And again, what it really boils down to for me is the fact that it's not really as much that they're doing it, but it's that if you did it, you would go to jail for the rest of your life.
Right.
That is the problem.
Right. Yeah. And so again, we're trying to get this framework, let's say, right. That's the term, get it right. Right? And we're trying to get it right, and we're trying to make it honest, and something like that, you know as well as I do, is never going to get approved because they want to front run that just like they want to front run everything else.
Oh yeah, they got to take their positions first.
Right. And you know, I think you highlighted a really good point earlier, and this is also where Trump 2.0 is very different from Trump 1.0, is that 2.0 is very much, it has the tech bro ethos of I think it's like the run fast and break things, right? So it's basically they're moving faster than the law can catch them, right? And like the tariffs is a great example of that. Completely illegal. Well, how long did it take them to figure that out? Like a year? You know, okay, great. All right, what's the next thing? It's like, well, now we're going to redo the tariffs based on this other obscure 1974 law. Okay, so it took months later. Guess what? Illegal. Okay, great. And so, you know, like half of the problem here is the law system in the US ties this stuff up indefinitely. And frankly, I mean, this is what Trump's done his entire life. He ties things up in this legal endless loop that just goes round and round and round and round, and eventually time moves on, right?
Yeah, it just wraps everything up in litigation, and moves on as though it doesn't exist. Pays some lawyer to keep, spinning the wheel. And
Yeah. Yeah. And so ultimately, again, I mean, I can totally see why that one would never get approved, even though to the average person, it should be obvious, because if it was you or me, we'd be sitting in jail.
well, the irony of it is that it's literally congressmen and women who are guilty of insider trading, who are trying to point a finger at the administration and say, we want to stop you from insider trading because it's morally not right. Okay, how about we stop you too then from front running the stock market, right? What the hell are we talking about here?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like if you looked at the Supreme Court and you said, hey, I need you guys to police yourselves by putting in age limits and an ethics code. You think they're ever going to do that? No, of course they're not.
They would immediately find a way to pass a law that prevents them from having to do that.
Right. Right. So they're never going to police themselves, just like all the legislators are never going to police themselves. And what makes all of this worse is the Supreme Court verdict that basically made the president a king, where he can say at any point, anything that happened under my administration was all just there for his official duties. That's the term. It was official duties. Me front running and making 750 million Q1 was official duties. And by the way, I'm pardoning all of my family.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
It's not. The thing is, it's not just that doesn't just protect him and his office, but even bureaucrats it protects. Gary Gensler is a perfect example. Gary Gensler destroyed the financial futures of untold millions of people.
Absolutely.
Over his tenure at the SEC. And he is completely and utterly safe and protected, shielded from litigation because of these rules, these laws that are put in place to protect anything that they decide to say is official duties, right?
I don't know. Did Biden pardon him at the end? I don't know if he did or not. No?
He didn't need one. He's completely protected from litigation. You're not allowed to sue a bureaucrat that runs an agency like the SEC or CFTC if they cause damage to your finances based on their official duties in office.
You know what pissed me off about Gensler? Now that I'm on a hot kick here, what's pissing me off? Let me tell you about Gensler.
You don't really grind my gears.
What grinds my gears about Gary? Yeah, you know what does it with him is that he's kind of like a cop, right? So he's like a police officer that he has a designated city or county, and instead he's policing a completely different city or county that he has no jurisdiction over, that he's arresting everybody. He did it his entire time he was in office. He's trying to take them all to court, and lo and behold, he's got no legal grounds to stand on. And what's he doing in the meantime? He's pissing away resources and a ton of taxpayer dollars. And on top of all that, he's, again, stifling innovation in America, which is anti-American.
Yep. Yeah, he will go down in the history books as a villain in the United States. He held back innovation for his entire tenure as a bureaucrat. Trying to make decisions that he was not voted into office to make.
Right. Yeah. Imagine going back in time to like the Rockefeller, or Henry Ford, or Hershey, or Flagler. All these big names, right? That were all involved in early innovation. All different ways. Candy, railroads, you name it, right? Imagine if the U.S. government had said, you know what, we're going to make it as hard as possible for every one of you to do business, and you're just going to have to go somewhere else. Like first of all, the country would be like half of what it is today. I mean, look at all the jobs and all the prospering that came about from these guys. Like, yeah, the guy may be an asshole, but regardless, you can't ignore the downstream effects of him being based in the U.S., and that's what they're doing with crypto when they're trying to be anti-crypto and pushing it somewhere else. Somebody else is going to step up to the plate and accept it. Like a great example of this is so in Florida here years ago, the governor was fundamentally against light-speed rail. Okay. So the citizens of the state all voted on it, and everybody said, we want light-speed rail. And they said, okay, we're going to start by building a line between Tampa and Orlando. So it took years and years and years for federal funding to finally be allocated. The funds were allocated, right? Billions of dollars, not like 1 billion, but billions plural. So the governor at the time, Rick Scott, who's still our senator because people keep voting for him, turned it down. He said, nope, I'm against light rail. No. So regardless of all the people voting for it, regardless of the billions being allocated, he said no. What do you think they did with the money? It went elsewhere. Pittsburgh said, hey, we'll take those billions. And they went, all right, here you go, Pittsburgh. Florida doesn't want it. And all the people in Florida were like, what? What do you mean we don't want the billions of dollars?
Scam.
And then what we did after that, we went ahead and reelected him. Let's make him a senator.
Good job, man. Right?
God.
The thing is, voters, they don't look at what these politicians are actually doing, right? They see them on TV. They say a bunch of nice shit that makes you think that they're good for you. But no one actually goes and looks at this stuff that we're talking about that they're doing. Because if you knew this stuff, you'd be like, what the hell? No, we don't want you.
Yeah.
But that's all swept aside. We don't talk about it. We don't dive into that stuff, right?
No.
So it's too bad, man. It's too bad. This has been a very hot topic. We might have to do a part 2 to this one.
Yeah. Yeah, we might have to, overall, the Clarity Act, I mean, it still hasn't even passed yet, right? It still has not passed yet. They're still kicking it around.
It's got to go to one more place before the president's desk. I don't know where. I can't remember what it is. House. I don't know. It just left the Agriculture Committee, right?
Agriculture? What?
Or what's it called? I don't know. I'm Canadian. I don't know the.
Send it to the farmers. Have them review it.
It's got one more step is all I know before it gets to the president's desk. So we are still a ways away. They're talking about like the 31st of May now before that becomes a possibility. And for me, the biggest scare here is that there's a lot of people that are new to this kind of stuff that are expecting once that act passes for markets to just start going parabolic. And that is a big problem in my opinion. People are going to get wrecked because it's just here's what's happening across the financial YouTube or crypto YouTube. Here's what's happening. Once the Clarity Act passes, markets are going to go pumping like crazy. Yeah, but what about the 2 wars that are going on and inflation rising and the potential now a 30% chance of a rate hike this year and stuff? What about all that? Oh, that's nothing, right? The Clarity Act's going to pass, so markets are going to go parabolic. Don't worry about inflation rising and rate hikes coming. Like, none of that shit matters, man, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I think the problem is right now is it's like, I was thinking about this the other day that I feel like it's been a really long time since we've had like a win, like just something good that we can all agree, like that's a good thing. We're all on board. Let's do it. And this could sort of be like the first one of like a Trump 2.0. That it would be a good thing if they could get this passed, but it's like we're still just going round and round and round, trying to add something, pull something out, and I don't know. I think somebody must have gotten Brian Armstrong's ear and finally said, "Look, dude, you got to get behind whatever is coming along because this is your one and only shot." And so now all of a sudden he's starting to sing a different tune.
Well, I think a perfect storm would be the Clarity Act passing maybe June, early June, or sometime in June. Get the Clarity Act passed and having an end to this war with Iran at the same time.
Oh, yeah, that'd be a relief.
That'd be fantastic. But we live in reality, right?
We do live in reality, sadly, and no one even knows why we're there to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe next year, right?
Yeah, one of these days we'll figure it out if we're not front running the market.
Yeah, if we're not, yeah. Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. So, Clarity Act, I would say, by and large, a good thing. I would say the crypto market needs regulation, and it's needed regulation for years. This would hopefully prevent some of the shenanigans of the current crypto market, or at least impose some penalties and some, again, guardrails, right? You have to have that stuff in place. If you want more adoption, you need more guardrails. One of the things that I've been talking about for a long time, it's kind of the big tuna, is the retirement accounts in the US, which it still has not tapped into, even though I think Trump maybe put an executive bulletin or something on that, or they cross that out.
We'll dive into that in the part 2.
Okay.
Put that feather in your cap, put a tack in it, because that is another amendment that Elizabeth Warren tried to pass. So we will unpack that in the next episode.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a big deal, right? I mean, if you can get into the retirement accounts in the US, that is a significant amount of money that is on the table, and currently not in it. So overall, I think it's a learning curve for Coinbase and Brian Armstrong and their legal team. I think they're trying to create a crypto lobby for the first time that's never previously existed, because they want to compete with banking. But the banking lobby is significantly more powerful than the cryptocurrency lobby. That's apparent, especially by, Elizabeth Warren and her various bad idea amendments. So at the end of the day, where does it leave the average person? I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. I mean, I would like to say that it comes out and the US market can participate in a broader way, but it's already been somewhat stifled. It's a stifling atmosphere thanks to Gensler and Warren and others. I disagree with limiting innovation. We should always promote innovation. It's a lot of things in one.
Yeah. I think what I would say is my final thought is that I would encourage you as an American citizen who votes. I mean, it's as easy as asking AI if you want to, right? Just look up whatever politician you're considering voting for, look up what bills and what amendments they have supported over the last handful of years, and answer the question internally: did their activity, did it signal to you that they're working in a beneficial way for you or not? Because a lot of times you end up voting for someone who's actually been acting in a detrimental way to your personal interests, to you and your family, your state, so on and so forth, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, when you look at, again, like the Marjorie Taylor Greene or the Pelosi or Trump, they're all examples of it. Is look where they started when they came in the door, and where they're leaving when they exit the door. And I mean, they are getting paid a salary to be there. And yes, they can invest, but can they cheat? Can they legally cheat? This is the fundamental problem here. They're legally cheating. And who's paying for it? Like on the backside of every scalp, every trade that you pulled money out, somebody lost money somewhere.
They're stealing money. Yeah.
Yeah, you're stealing money and you're putting it all in the pocket of somebody that. What are we doing here, and why do we keep reelecting this person? I don't know.
Well, and to answer the rhetorical question I know somebody out there is asking, the reason that they're legally doing it is because there's not a single soul running the SEC that's going to go after anyone in Congress. It's that simple. They can, they don't. They wouldn't dare. Because
Very
Congress holds the purse strings for the SEC.
At least they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Trump's challenged that a few times recently, and Congress hasn't really reasserted its power, which is kind of weird because that's how the Constitution was designed. And while we're on it, I would just say, summing this up, that I could equally do an hour of the Constitution on its own. But this is another thing right now in today's day and time that I'm fundamentally struggling with, is that a lot of the actions within our government, regardless of the party, are anti-American. They're anti-constitutional.
Yeah. We live in a world where they feel they can just do whatever they want.
If you don't hold them accountable, they can, right?
Yeah. Passive permission. That's the word of the day. Right.
That'd be a good episode title for this one.
Passive permission. There you go. Yep.
There you go.
All right, guys. This concludes our broadcast day. We will see you again on Wednesday.
Yep. And I think I'm going to go get some Tylenol.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you then.
All right. Shift out.